So I am going to be your moderator for this LinkedIn panel. My name is Clifton Corbin. I'm the author of Your Kids, Their Money and The Richest Person in Babylon, a revised version of The Richest Man in Babylon. We're going to be talking about what LinkedIn can do. Thank you for that, Scott. We're going to be talking about what LinkedIn has done for our businesses and what it could do for your business. We love all the people on this panel love LinkedIn. We've all been using it, but there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we're going to try to get into all of it today. So I am going to pass the mic over to Scott just to talk about what Scott does. I'm sure everyone here knows Scott, but let's talk about what Scott does and how he's been using LinkedIn.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so I've been on LinkedIn for quite a while. Love the platform. For the last 22 years, I've been an entrepreneur, primarily in real estate lending. Last 16, I've been focused in the distressed mortgage debt space. So I'm known to kind of cross the country as the note guy for buying over $1 billion in distressed residential and commercial debt. And I've used LinkedIn for a long time. Actually, just recently capped out my connections on there at 30,000 about a month or two ago. But used it in a variety of fashions to connect with asset managers at banks for those internal connections that we need in my niche. We use it also to help market our award-winning podcast, the Note Closer Show, and also use it to raise capital and get our word out to investors and connect with other real estate professionals on there. So absolutely love it. And it's got pros and cons. It's come a long way from when I first started using it back about 16 years ago, but it's been really, really well.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go over to Wendy. Wendy, can you tell us what you do and how you've been using LinkedIn to help your platform?
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. I'm Wendy Velos. I'm a social impact strategist, and I help businesses and nonprofits to level up not only their financial positions, but also their ability to serve the community and others. And what have I used LinkedIn for? I have used LinkedIn mostly to gain a pretty big following through a newsletter and just to connect to people in my niche. Not everyone cares about social impact. But for folks who do, it's actually been really cool to see people opt into the conversation on LinkedIn and the various ways that I've done it. So whether it's a live or hopping into different groups and commenting on things, it's been really neat to see all of the impact making organizations and people on LinkedIn kind of come out and be supportive. So that's what I've been up to.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And David, can you tell us about yourself at LinkedIn and how you've been using it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a former business broker, and I work now as a consultant, helping people who either want to buy or sell a small or medium-sized business. And my primarily my social media channel that I use to promote myself is actually YouTube. But the way that I use LinkedIn is I use LinkedIn as a tool to help grow that YouTube audience. But there's a lot of real conversations that happen on LinkedIn, even from people who may find me over on YouTube. They'll come over and talk with me on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is the platform where people talk about business. And I've found that it's much easier to reach people when you try to reach them on LinkedIn. And the people who make the effort to come and contact me on LinkedIn and have conversations with me are usually much more serious about doing some business. They're interested in learning more because they have a need. And so the quality of the conversations tends to be a lot better than any of the other social platforms I find.
Thank you so much for that. And so just a quick word on myself. So I've been using LinkedIn mostly as a networking tool. My early days, I wasn't an author. I wasn't a financial literacy advocate like I am now. And I used it as my Rolodex. I basically, if I met someone at a conference, if I met someone through work, it was a way to make sure I could keep in touch with them. It was an easier and I found more professional way than trying to use any of the other social media platforms for sure. And I also thought it was helpful in that, an email is just an email, but at least with LinkedIn, you have a profile. You can remember, okay, I met this person from, or this person's doing this and doing that. So that's why I started using LinkedIn. And then as I started doing more of my book promotions and meeting people, I realized it was a way to have those deeper, engaged conversations. So I've enjoyed it for that. And it's a platform that I don't think it started being a platform for creators where you can have those communications and have those relations, but I think they've been trying to go down that route. And Wendy and Scott, I see you both shaking your heads very vigorously there.
I think you made me choke, actually.
So tell me why. Why did you choke on that word?
Because I've been on LinkedIn forever, and I think a lot of us have. If you were at ever some point in the late 2000s a job seeker, right? You were
Right.
probably looking on LinkedIn for a job. I mean, I looked on LinkedIn many times for jobs. So the profile that I had was created for large employers to find me. It wasn't created for small business owners and nonprofits to find me. So
Right.
even when LinkedIn decided to change its plan, and then I decided to change my plan for LinkedIn, there was a whole bunch of things that needed to happen for that to align, because I had a job seeker profile for a long
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And unlike a Facebook and things like that, where like maybe I'm not going to go back 10 years and bother to change things, on LinkedIn, I'm going to go back 10 years and bother to change things. So it is just kind of a funny, when you said that, I just laughed because it reminded me of that moment when I went, oh, my profile is not aligning with this idea of creating content on a platform.
So I think I see everyone's head nodding, and I could definitely relate to this, but I kind of want to go around to each of you and say, how did you have to, if you started with a profile that was more focused on, let's say, job seeking, and then you had to change it to, let's say, lead creation, or just, trying to get clients, or whatever you were doing to build your business or your brand, what did you have to do specifically to change your profile? I'll start with you, Scott.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I had to do is rethink my plan of action. Kind of like what Wendy said, you have to think differently because each platform is a little bit different. And while I've used it primarily in the past, just the connection side of connecting with asset managers and professionals, I realized that, hey, and I think LinkedIn was partly a fault, was very late to the game in helping people get on board and help them promote themselves a little bit more through content creation. I mean, I don't know how many, with a LinkedIn Live and how slow they rolled that out with video compared to everybody else, and some of the other features that they've rolled out, it's been kind of disappointing, because it's like, okay, I don't want to do all this extra work just for one platform. I'm a big believer that if I can create something and reshare it across different platforms, it makes it a whole lot easier. But having to come up with a plan of actions that's totally different for this one platform versus the rest is the biggest struggle. But now it's merged more where I can kind of just, okay, record one thing and reshare it there, or leverage the live, and the newsletter too is one of the greater things that, you talked about, Wendy, that you're using. I think it's one of the greater things to connect with people a little bit more intimately than just posts online.
What about you, David? Did you have to do any big tweaks to your profile over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think I was, Wendy mentioned the late 2000s. I think I was on in the early 2000s. In fact, I can remember logging onto LinkedIn when I used to go to an office, a certain office that I used to work in. I can remember being on the website in that office. And so, yeah, it was totally a website where it was basically a resume.
Yeah,
The
right.
basic LinkedIn profile is set up like someone's resume might be, with their work history and everything. And that's what my LinkedIn profile looked like. I remember as I evolved and got into different business to business sales jobs, I would call people on the phone, leave voicemail messages for them, and then you know how LinkedIn shows you who's looked at your profile?
Mhm.
I would log into LinkedIn and see that the person I left a voicemail for had looked at my profile. And that was a big eye opener for me, because what it indicated to me is that people were using it to snoop and investigate
Right.
who people were. And so as soon as I realized that, I actually said, you know what, I need to work on this now, because your headline, for example, on your LinkedIn profile is often just your job title at your most recent job. And so in that sales role, what I did is I said, what's my number one message I'm trying to get across to people when I call them? So I reformatted my headline to just address that need. Yeah, and magic started to happen. I started to get people returning my phone calls more regularly. I would call somebody, and then instead of calling me back, they would send me a connection request on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Or I would learn that if someone didn't return my call, that I would send a connection request to them on LinkedIn. And sometimes I was able to open up a conversation through LinkedIn that I couldn't open up on the telephone. And so as that developed and as my network grew through that sales job, I was trying to connect with everyone I had contact with. Later, when I went out on my own, it was instrumental actually in getting initial clients through the door to help me build a cash flow before the fruit of those YouTube seeds that I planted about 7, 8 years ago actually bore fruit. And so I was going on there, sending messages to people, letting them know what I was doing to try to get more clients. And that led to sort of the third iteration of my LinkedIn profile, which was much more about thinking about who my ideal client avatar was from a consulting client point of view, and reformatting everything to speak to them. And so that headline changed again, and that sort of biography box, the main information box, went from being about me to being about them and being
Nice.
about what issue they might have and how my services could help them. And things like uploading media. For many years now, I've had a LinkedIn introduction video, and it's the only place that particular video stands. And so I can look at it's because it's basically an unlisted video on YouTube that I just kind of plugged in there. I can go over on YouTube and see how many people have watched it. And so
Nice.
it's kind of interesting. People are looking at it. They're watching that video that's only on my LinkedIn profile. So it's evolved over time. And was that the end of your question, or was there
No,
something else I forgot?
that's good. No, I want to actually, I'm gonna cut you off because that was phenomenal, and you brought some big points up that I want to highlight just in case people might have missed it. LinkedIn is an amazing resource to get around the gatekeepers. Like, it's a way to go directly to your target, whoever that may be, whether you're trying to connect to a podcast host, the CEO, the sales, marketing, business director. It can get you right to that person. And I see in your story that you've been able to use it just for that. And you also highlighted the value of that headline and changing your profile to really speak to your audience. I think, Wendy, I'm going to come to you now because I think I've seen your profile and I see that you've done that very well, especially since you're so focused on making an impact and helping people who are also making an impact. So if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about how you had to change your profile from those job seeker days to now as a creator, and if you can, how you've been able to manage using the headline, and if you could talk a bit about your newsletter as well.
Yeah, so I need to do that last change. That was a pro tip right there, just changing your bio to be about your buyer. I'm like, I've been needing to spend time doing that, but after this, I will commit to. That's the next change on my profile. But I just really had to look at my work experience and see, what is it am I doing now as an entrepreneur that wasn't even necessary as a prior as a worker for someone else, but it's a skill that I had or I learned somewhere else. And so I went back into each individual job and looked for sort of where was the impetus of this skill that I'm using now? Like, where did I first get the skill of marketing? I didn't talk about that I had done marketing in the government with my Office of Communications because it just was part of my job. That was a completely different function, so I had to go back and see what parts of my experience I just didn't highlight enough. And then after I did that, I really went through and looked at the layout and the headline and the header image and all of the different pieces of where people just are looking at the profile and what am I doing. And I also realized that my picture was just this headshot that I had gotten from somebody, and standing in front of a white background. It just didn't particularly stand out. It was a nice photo, great photo, but it just didn't stand out. And so I went through and I took a picture in a very bright color and had a dark background and changed all of my social media to that one picture. And I put it on LinkedIn. And then I also added that picture, a different version, but same address, to the header. So it looks like it's same me, same day. It's just two different pictures. Right. I just did little things like that to make sure it was consistent, that these are things that you see big brands do and big branding experts tell you to do. But until you take the time to just redo your profile and look at the details of each section, LinkedIn's profile is very complex. So you have to do section by section. And that's essentially what I did, is I went section by section. But let's come back to the newsletter because I think we want to welcome Flint.
Yes, Flint, thanks for joining us. So we're doing our LinkedIn panel, and Flint is another LinkedIn high profile user. So we want to have him here as well. So just to get him looped in and get everyone connected with Flint. Flint, could you tell us a bit about what you do and how you've been using LinkedIn to help you and your brand?
Yeah, hi guys. I raise capital for real estate, like apartment buildings and development, and we give investors double-digit returns. So that sums it up at the very high level. On LinkedIn, I try to provide as much value as possible. So lots of posting. I have started doing outbound this year with questionable, actually, I shouldn't say questionable results. I have generated a lot of conversation, which is quite fun. Whether it's been fruitful is still up in the air.
Thank you for that. So we're just going into some of the ways that we've had to change our profiles from, let's say, the early days of LinkedIn to our current days of LinkedIn, I just want to give a couple of tips here as well to folks who might be listening. So if you're a brand, if you're a business owner, if you're a content creator, one of the things that you need to do on LinkedIn, if you haven't already done it, is click that creator, I believe it's like creator mode. That changes the way you're seen by your audience. That will make sure that you get to say what part of your content they see first, instead of just seeing your resume, as we were saying before. So that's a big piece. It's just making sure that you're now seen as a creator. It also gives people the ability to follow you. So most times when you start off on LinkedIn, you're really connecting with people. So you're saying, you know, I know you from this career or from that job, and I want to connect with you. As your profile gets bigger, people might just want to follow what you're doing and then maybe connect with you in some way or somehow. So the following is only available once you're into that creator mode as well. And then a couple other things that I just want to highlight, and I think everyone's kind of spoke to it already, but you really want to focus your profile on your end user. How are you solving their problems? How are you you know, building, what is your job? What are you doing? What's your role? What are you trying to, what outcomes are you trying to help them achieve? And that's the way that you should be, you know, making your profile, especially your headline, because the headline follows you. So if you make a comment on someone else's post or someone else's feed, that headline is shown. So they see right away, oh, this is an influencer, this is an author, this is a public speaker, this is a whatever you might be doing. So you really want to make sure you've got that headline matched to what you're doing, and not just a, you know, founder of that. It's not enough content there. You need a little bit more. So those are some things that you could do to, you know, really make sure your profile is happening. So everyone here on this call, on the panel, they use LinkedIn very differently. So Scott, I know you use the lives. Wendy, I know you're using newsletters. David, I know you're just connecting with people. And Flynn, I know you said you started to do a lot of outbound as well. So I want to talk very specifically about some of those different things. And I want to start with Scott with the lives, because I'm curious, are you creating your content strictly on LinkedIn? Are you creating your content outside of LinkedIn and importing it? So talk a little bit about how you've been using live for your brand.
Yeah, great question. So we're celebrating our 800th podcast recording here in the next week for the Note Closer Show. Thank you very much. Yeah. Number one podcast. We have the number one YouTube channel for note investors out there. And so what we're doing, kind of what Clint was talking about, we do raise a lot of capital, but we also raise a lot of awareness with these bank asset managers and a lot of direct outbound reach outs like David was talking about. I love that video attachment, that David talked about, because you only have 300 characters to make a first impression for most people. But if you add a video link, you've got minutes then, which has been a secret thing. But it's a replication of it, making sure that our videos get in front of the right people. If you go back and I compare the views on our videos on LinkedIn Live, it has a much higher saturation rate versus a Facebook Live, or even a YouTube Live, where we've got over 7,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel. We still get a bigger hit off of LinkedIn Live because we've tailored that LinkedIn audience to really be the ideal clients we're looking for: bankers, investors, and other real estate investors. It was actually funny. I have to tell you this. I was on a call with a bank asset manager a couple of weeks ago, talking about a apartment complex they had for sale on a note deal. And we get to talking, and he calls, well, I think we're connected on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I think so. And sure enough, we've been connected. I look back, we've actually been connected for about 3 years. Oh, yeah, you're that note guy.
There it is.
He goes, I love your videos, your short ones and your long videos on there. You actually taught me something about note investing that I didn't know as the president of bank for like 20 years. I found that kind of hilarious. I had a call just a few minutes ago before I got started here with a guy who's listened to my podcast and came across on it 8 months ago on a LinkedIn post in a LinkedIn group that we share it to. And, he's like, oh, I've been following you. I want to get into this more so. And so he's looking to invest, about $100,000 with us in some note deals. So it's just a great way. I think the biggest thing that most people fail to realize is, I quote this quite often. I should probably have a tattoo on my ass. This is 80% of sales are made after the 5th contact. And I think LinkedIn is more effective in that touch basis, that contact basis, than anything else is. Whether it's outbound phone calls or email, the whole following up on LinkedIn and connecting there is something we've been doing for a while. But it just gives you the opportunity to touch base and people to see what you're doing, so you expedite that conversion, I guess you could say. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah. I would say, especially from all of you, but anyone who's creating content on LinkedIn, you're building that trust like factor very quickly, and the expertise, right? It's like people are like, oh, wait, this person is. It's rare that you'll see someone who's posting something who doesn't feel like they at least know what they're doing. Now, whether you convince the other person that you do know what you're doing or not, that's really up to your content to do that. But people say, oh, if this person's willing to put themselves out there, they probably know what they're talking about. So having that LinkedIn Live, I can see how it's worked out well for you. Flint, you missed a couple minutes, so I'm going to get you in here. Can you tell us a little bit about specifically what factor, what component, what tools you're using on LinkedIn the most that you've seen really drive your business?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We all talk about there's an algorithm, and you got to understand the algorithm so you know how to play the game right. Others say if your content is good enough, you can ignore the algorithm, which I think is in large part true. But I'm not a natural content builder, and my content doesn't go viral all the time, like say Cody Sanchez. So I do have to play by the rules. And what I have noticed, I'm giving you guys a background story because I think everybody kind of goes through this level of learning. Last year, when I was just purely doing posts and creating value to others, I was getting a lot more inbound. People just the organic inbound. And that organic inbound is some of the most powerful you can create because they're already pseudo warmed up and they're willing to talk to you. Outbound is much harder because you're reaching out to someone cold and you got to work these sales messages that are really hard to not be spammy. LinkedIn is super, super, super spammy. Everyone's getting hit with spam. So you got to somehow stand out. And that's where I'm trying to figure out, not only create value, but the algorithm changed over the years. So my inbound has been reduced. But how do I also create a message that stands out to others? And it is creating these personal relationships. So to crack the code a little bit of what I've learned, I'm using this software called, I believe it's Octopus. Sorry, I'm obviously in my car. And 2 thumbs up, so it is Octopus. It does this automated outreach, and you give it your message. So they are canned messages because you give it one message, and then every day I have it send 35 contact requests with a message. Now it'll tell me I basically in large part say, hey, LinkedIn is spammy enough. I'll be straightforward with you. If you connect with me, I'm going to hit you with a sales pitch. If not, go ahead and delete this message and move on. You know what? I got like a 20% acceptance rate. And so what Octopus does is it sends me, hey, these people accepted. And I can actually just turn around and say, send all these people my pitch, but I don't do that because that's when you just get too spammy because now you're sending this non-personalized pitch. So the 20% I get, I go and look at their profile and the avatar is like me. I come from aerospace. I designed aircraft for 20 years and now I'm doing this real estate thing. My avatar is engineers in leadership in whatever position. I go and look at their profile and I find something that's similar. And most of my people that I'm targeting come from the aerospace industry. So there's a common language that we speak. I send a very tailored message. Hey, I see you do this, this, and this. Common, and then I say, thank you for connecting. As promised, here's the pitch. And I leave the pitch super short and just wait for it to go.
Interesting. So you're both you and Scott talk about creating content. Yours used to be a little bit more post-based, like text-based, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Right. And now you're doing a little bit more of the outbound. And I'm going to get into the automation for sure. Put a pin in that one just for a moment. But I like how you said when you're creating value, and we all know this, right? Like as soon as we start talking about, the audience is receptive. When we're talking about ourselves, no one cares about us except for us. And our moms. So we need to be very concerted effort to be putting out content that is focused on helping our audience get from point A to point B. And now if that's a LinkedIn Live or a post, we see there's value in both. David, I don't know, like I know, Wendy, we're coming back to you to talk about newsletters in a moment, but David, I'm not sure how you're using LinkedIn and what features you're using most often.
Yeah, so every Wednesday morning I put out a new video on YouTube. And when I put out that new video on YouTube, I also take that video and I make it into a LinkedIn article, which is attached to the LinkedIn newsletter. So it gets pushed out to a few thousand people that have subscribed to that newsletter. So there's a push element to it. Now, when you create that new article, you also put a post out that says, I've got a new article about this. And so there's a couple of different things that I do. Number one, I use groups. So that particular video, I'm a member of probably well over 150 groups. And so what I'll do then is I'll look at my list of groups and I'll look at which groups have topicality that might be interested in the content of that video. And so then I'll go into those groups and I'll put a post about that new article. And so, I don't do it to every group every week. It's just if there's a topic related there. And so what'll happen is my post will appear and some new people that are part of that group might be able to see that content. They might go subscribe to me on YouTube. They might decide to come and check out my profile, any of those things. But the audience building primarily through the connections, I think, is key, because if you join someone as a first order connection, people that are their connections, your second order, can also sometimes see posts that you put into LinkedIn. And so growing your first order connections is really important. I know you want to talk about the automation thing. I'd like to give a big reason why someone should not get into LinkedIn automation. Number one, it's against the terms of service. So they specifically say if you let any kind of automated tool into your account, that they can close your account. And my LinkedIn profile is just way too valuable to me to risk it in that way. But, Flint, you said you get about 20% of people accepting. I get over 90% of my connection requests accepting. And here's how I do it is I actually do them one at a time myself. And so if I see someone putting a post in a group and it's relevant to me and I'll comment on that post, then I'll send that person a connection request and I'll say, hey, I just read your post that you put in this group and I thought it was really great. And I'm also doing stuff that, in some way relates to what you're doing. And I thought it'd be great to connect with you. Like 100% of those connection requests are accepted. Or if I'm reading like a magazine, like here where I live, we have a regional news magazine that comes out every month. That's all about business stuff. And they'll have articles about businesses. I'll go through that with a highlighter and I'll just highlight names. And then I'll go on to LinkedIn and I'll just send I'll cut and paste a message. It just says, hey, I was reading the latest edition of that magazine and I read that article about you. I thought it was really cool. I wanted to connect. Almost 100% of those get accepted. And so really having a reason, like a real reason, even if it's just we graduated from the same school, you're going to get a really high connection acceptance rate. And the more of those first order connections you have, the more second order people there are going to be. And the more second order people there are, the more inbound connection requests you're going to get. And I've seen that grow over time as I implement these strategies. Excuse me. And yes, I do invest some time in it every week. So obviously that's the downside to not using automation is it costs me in time because I actually have to spend time doing this.
It sounds like a significant amount of time too. So I want to talk about the value of growing your network and how everyone's doing it. But Wendy, I need to come to you because I love your newsletter and I want you to talk about how the newsletter has become the way that you use LinkedIn.
I was trying to think of the origin story for the newsletter, and it actually is with the podcast. So they kind of go hand in hand. I started my podcast on social audio before I went onto LinkedIn. And so I already had the podcast and the branding and all of those things. And just to start it, I was going to turn some of those conversations into repurposed LinkedIn content. And I started repurposing blog posts and some other things to that newsletter. And I use it to drive a lot of traffic back to my website and my email list, but I haven't used it a lot for inbound marketing on the platform because a lot of the times I'm really trying to get people to things that are either off the platform or it's just repurposed there for them to consume and then think I'm this wonderful guru expert, right? So that's really what the newsletter has been for. And so at some point I realized when it started growing bigger and bigger, I was like, I'm losing a lot of money here. Now, I still have not fully monetized this newsletter, but it got to 10K on me all of a sudden. And I was just like, okay, well, now what am I doing with this newsletter? So instead of doing anything with it, y'all, I just have stopped doing the newsletter. But it's partially because I'm redoing a bunch of my marketing things and it's going to be a bigger part of my marketing. But that being said, I learned a few things along the way. I think everything that you said, David, is completely valid. You know, the newsletters are pushed out via email. What I realized is that LinkedIn sometimes chooses not to push out your newsletters. And so there's been a couple where I have 10,000 subscribers. One edition will get 4,000 opens. The next edition gets 27 opens.
Interesting.
When I
Really?
asked the platform what happens to this one, because this is not normal, the only thing that had happened in between then is the people who subscribed to the newsletter, I had gone through and engaged on a lot of their posts, started looking at their things, followed a few people, connected with a few people. I did not do it in a spammy way, completely manual, because you can only do it manually with a newsletter. And that made the algorithm tank my entire newsletter outreach and my profile for a little while. So my posts were not going anywhere. I was getting like 200 views on my posts. So what I realized, and when I reached out to LinkedIn, was that they do not want you to in any way try to take those subscribers from that newsletter. They don't, there's no good way to do it in an automated way, and there's no good way to do it in a manual way. So I don't recommend that anybody do it. That's the point. I recommend that folks use a newsletter to drive people to you, but the second that you start trying to drive yourself to those newsletter folks, the platform just sort of squashes you down.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and it's like forewarning. I've tried it multiple times, and don't do it. And the other thing I do on news that we haven't talked about, but it's still part of creator mode, is the social audio component. Because when I created the newsletter, like I said, it's all part of this collective, the Social Impact Level Up Collective that I created. And I wanted people from the collective to not just consume from me, but be able to connect to each other, because as social entrepreneurs, it's just as important for folks to support each other and get that collective impact piece. So I created these spaces once a month for folks to just come and network, and I just call it social impact networking. I'll have a general topic that I'm going to talk about just to keep it lively. I'll host the space and facilitate and have people come up and join. Now, the one thing if I could do it all over again, with having known one of my friends who's known as America's Supermom, you might know her on LinkedIn. She's amazing. She taught me a couple of things about this. One, I probably should have done the newsletter via my business page, not my personal profile, because that would have really grown my business branding on the platform versus my Wendy Velos branding on the platform. So that was one thing I would have done over. The second thing is, in the social audio space, when you do a social audio room as a person, only one person can be in charge and can help the space. If you do it as a page, multiple people can facilitate. And so you have to have 100 people on your business page to get creator mode on your business page. Well, of course, I didn't grow the newsletter or anything on that business page. So I've got like 30 people, because I can't even do any of these things over there, right? So you still like kind of in that early mode. If you have both a business page and a personal page, you should decide what you're really trying to invest in growing. Because if I had to do it over again, I would have invested in growing the network of my business and not the network of myself. So
that's a huge tip. And I found that challenging as well, in that because again, I started on LinkedIn as as an employee, and then I've kind of changed into the creator entrepreneur space. And I've had a challenge saying, like, do I build, and I have a couple of different, businesses. It's like, do I build my network around my name and just keep it on under my personal profile, or do I start building these business pages? And I've done something similar in that I've said, well, it's always going to be me. The businesses may come, they may be sold. There's all these other options. So I've always said I want my network to stay under me, but you bring up some good points about where these different assets should live. And I've heard other people say something similar, like sometimes it really makes sense to build up that business page, and sometimes it makes sense to build up your personal page. But I think the takeaway is be very intentional about which one you decide to build. And for those who may not be aware, you can have a personal page, and you could also have your business could also have its own little asset within LinkedIn, a business page, and that page could build newsletters, and it could put out articles, and it's all under that brand. So, but you get to own it, you get to run it as a business page. So just be intentional about where you put your assets, where you how you build your brand. So there's a couple things that's come up in the last couple of minutes. There's
Clifton.
Oh, go ahead, David.
Clifton, before you move on,
Yeah,
I'd just like to say this for everyone that's listening that may be new to LinkedIn. The last thing anyone should do is create a personal profile and give it their business name and put their business's logo as the picture.
Yes.
Because that is the biggest noob mistake that anyone could make. And most longtime LinkedIn people will never accept a connection request from someone who's dressed up a personal profile to look like a business.
That's 100% right.
I think we need to say that for people who may not be on the platform, because I get it all the time where I get a connection request from someone who's got like a logo of their company as their picture, and
Yeah.
they're just not getting LinkedIn at all.
Well, so the two things I was going to bring up, I'll bring up in a moment, but I'm going to double down on that statement and say LinkedIn, and we kind of brought it up at the beginning, but LinkedIn's benefit is that it's a way to go one-on-one with somebody else, right? So as soon as you change that relationship from me and this person to this person in my business, the relationship's different. And if it's just the connection, it may not happen, which is again, going back to what we were just saying with Wendy, it's like, be very intentional on where you set these things up. But thank you for that, David, because you're right. I would never accept a connection request from what looked like a business trying to reach out to me. I just don't. But I want to get into a few things. One, automation. Two, the value of building your connections and building your network. And there's a few other things, and we'll see if we have time for it. But David, I've got your take on automation. Flint, I think I got your take on automation. Wendy, Scott, where do you both stand on the automation piece? Scott,
Wendy,
I'll start with
ladies
you.
first. Go right
Oh,
ahead. Wendy.
lovely.
I
Go
let
ahead,
Wendy
Wendy.
go first.
I'm the one who doesn't even know how to do it right. Like I'm like, what are y'all automating on LinkedIn? Let me know. Although I will say, going back to the outbound thing, I get those automated messages a lot. I hate them. I detest them. I like the humor ones. I appreciate that. I also get the coach for coaches all the time. So there's just some of these pieces that I don't like about LinkedIn, which makes me not want to participate. So even if automation wasn't against terms of services, could save my life, I don't know, I still feel ick about it. And I think that may just be a personal thing, but I suspect I'm not the only one.
Nobody likes to
Scott.
be pitch slapped, which is what happens in a lot of automation. Is the pitch slapping. And Flint, yeah, thumbs up on that. So I take my automation. I use the same tool that Flint was talking about, Octopus CRM, but I do it a little bit differently. We do pull lists of profiles, but I'm being very specific, like real estate investors Georgia, or real estate or note investors Texas. Or I'll pull a list of like people that have used their IRA to buy a deal that I can pull them off the county records, and then I'll have my VA go out and find those people's profiles, and then we'll put it in list, and then upload that list, and then I send the message out, and I can merge it so it sounds much more personal. It's not a pitch. Like, hey, I see that you're an investor in Georgia. Are you looking for more deals for your IRA? I'd love to talk about. Here's a video on a case study we just did there. Something similar. It's not pitchy. I've used it for booking podcasts. Appointments for myself. Say, hey, I see that you have a real estate podcast. I would love to talk with you. I've got a great audience. I think I might be able to help your show this way. Check out the video with my 2-minute pitch Scott as a guest and stuff like that. So I try to take it away from that very AI driven kind of that same old, we all know those pitches, to make it much more personable and add a little humor, add myself to it as well. I think if you can throw some, when you see people clicking on you, if you share some of that personal side as well, I like to make sure if I'm doing this automation that I'm sharing something a little bit different. Podcast episode, even posting on the weekends is where a lot of people don't do. And I get a huge engagement on Saturday and Sunday on there with either a photo, a short video, or something that I'm doing fun to add a little bit difference in just the business side of LinkedIn.
So it seems like we're about 50-50 on the automation. And again, it's, we should, again, David, you've already highlighted it. It is against the terms of service. I think these tools, there's another one called Linked Helper, and Octopus is very popular. They're done in a way that it's supposed to not seem to the app that it's automated, but you do run the risk of the app saying this looks automated. And like David said, you could lose your account. And I think all of us see the value of our accounts. So no, this isn't to say do or don't do automation. Just be aware of what you are risking if you do that way. But the point of the automation, and it sounds like, Scott, you're doing it the same way that Flint is doing it, is to build your connections. This is a way to reach out to people and say, hey, I see that you're doing something here, and I may be able to help, or maybe there's some connection here. Let's connect. So can we just talk about the value of building those connections and why we're trying to build our networks the way we are? Let's start with Flint, because I want to get you involved here, Flint.
Well, yeah, I want to hit back really quick on automation. Yes,
sure. Perfect.
LinkedIn is watching, but as long as you don't abuse the amount of automation, basically LinkedIn's looking for 200, I think it's 200 actions in a day. And that, I mean, I've made LinkedIn think that I was automation because I worked it super hard one day and I was like, no, I just manually did that. So it's just number of actions. That's why I only send out 35 connection requests a day. And if I get a bad boy, actually, I got a bad boy message this morning after 2 months of doing this. So for the first time, so I'll dial it back. I'll do 30 a day, and I won't trigger those.
And an interaction
but
is commenting on someone's post, requesting a connection, anything that you do, anytime you hit enter, that's considered an interaction.
Yeah, and also if you start opening up a whole bunch of LinkedIn windows, like a bunch of tabs,
right,
that'll trigger it actually faster. And I think that's where I got in trouble this morning. I opened up a bunch of tabs. So, but yeah, anyway.
Oh, okay, so so the value of building those connections, why would you want to build your network automated or manually? What's the value there?
Yeah. Well, I think David kind of pointed it out where the bigger your network, the more reach you have. And that's not only just first connections, that's the second connections will start to see it. You get people commenting and it'll go off and it'll ping their network. So, and really, I mean, quality over quantity, but at some point you can find a lot more quality if your network is bigger. If you only know 10 people, you're not going to have much reach, even if they're high quality. You need more. So there's a balance there. I mean, I would love to have 100,000 followers because I could have 2,000 super quality leads, and that would be epic for me, right? And probably epic for a lot of people. So, it's just balancing, building those quality relationships, but getting as much visibility as possible.
Can I just ask, because I think that kind of sums it up for most folks, like it's really about being able to reach your target demo, and typically your target demo also has people in their network that's also in your target demo. And as soon as you have that first degree connection, their connections and their connections start seeing your content. So the value of building your network is really that you get more reach, and whatever you're reaching your network for, whether that be for leads or for landing podcast opportunities, all of that can come from that. I'm curious, is anyone here using Sales Navigator?
No, but I want to go to something that Flint was just
saying
before we go to another tool, because I think that that's an important point that people shouldn't get wrapped up in, though. I mean, yes, the numbers, you see some people on LinkedIn, their numbers are really big and they probably have a ton of connections who will never be a qualified lead because they just connected with any old folk who sent them something on the internet. And I think that you have to be discerning about, if you only have so many invites to give to the party, who are you really going to invite to sit around the dinner table? And even then, if you only have so much food to feed those mouths because your kitchen is only yay big, are those qualified leads really going to go anywhere in your funnel anyway? So from a business strategy perspective, it's really, to me, much more a tool for intentionality of how am I connecting with the appropriate leads to get them into the appropriate stages, or just building awareness. Because if I'm simply building awareness and getting people into my pipeline, then that's one set of actions. But if I'm really working a qualified pipeline and making sure that I'm moving them from one part of the funnel to another, then I'm not going to want 200,000 people in there. I'll be really honest, because my back end is there. You can see it. I'm a solopreneur. So there's no automation back there behind the door either. So, what you see is what you get. I can only process so much work. So that to me means being more intentional about the connections that I have on any platform.
I like how you said that. And I think that comes back to making sure that you've got some type of content strategy, right? Like I think it was Flint, correct me if I'm wrong, did you do the McDonald's versus Burger King post poll?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That's my only post that went viral, and it was worthless. So I literally put out a poll, McDonald's versus Burger King. That was in my early days. I was just saying, just to see what works. LinkedIn took it viral, went around the world. I got probably 200,000 views and hundreds and hundreds of comments. But out of that, it was like India picked up on it, and I think that's when it went viral. I was like, that doesn't help me at all. So back to the intentionality, you got to focus on quality. So yeah.
All right, David, do you have anything to add here? Because again, you're the one who kind of brought up the point of like reaching those second and third connections. So I'd love to hear your
Oh,
thoughts
I'm
here too.
curious to know what everyone else thinks about these paid accounts because every time I go and look at it and consider whether it's worthwhile for my uses to have those paid upgraded accounts, I honestly don't see what the benefit is. So, do any of you guys have an upgraded account?
So I've used it when I'm definitely on the note investing side, getting up the higher food chain to a bank president, bank CEO.
Sure.
We can't get a first level degree connection. So that's come in handy, and we don't run it year long. We may run it for a month and then drop it off, run it for another month, drop it off to do that. But that's really what's been the biggest advantages of that. That now another thing is just to go find where that individual's at, any groups they're in, and then you can connect with those individuals a lot easier. But a lot of those higher ups aren't spending a lot of time in groups, aren't spending a lot of time digesting a lot of content on there. I mean, they're on there because it's the platform, but it's when we need to take it to an upper level connection, and we're not getting anywhere with our current current asset manager that we're talking with, or can't get an inroads into somebody at that bank or that hedge fund that we're trying to buy from.
So just for those who might not be aware, so when we're talking paid accounts, there's add-on tools that you can add to LinkedIn. I would say for this audience, the most popular would be Sales Navigator. Sales Navigator allows you to do more filtered searches and reach a different, like just be able to use. So back step a bit, LinkedIn has a wealth of data, just like all of these social media platforms, on all of us. It could, drill down to finding a bank manager in this city during these dates. Like it could go very granular. Buying access to these tools like Sales Navigator gives you access to that data. So then you can start drilling down. So if you're trying to connect with certain people in certain roles, this gives you a way to find them and aggregate them a little bit quicker than if you were to just try to use the groups and the other tools that are available in LinkedIn proper. So it sounds like, Scott, you do use it a bit. I've used it. I also, like I said, it gives you that chance to get a little bit more granular a little faster. And I'm just a data guy, so I was curious. I don't know if it was worth it for me. And I think, Scott, you have the best approach where it's like, do it for a month and then cancel it. And if you need to, do it again, as opposed to like buying like a year membership or what have you. So I think that's a good approach. Scott, or sorry, Flint, I think I saw you shaking your head. Are you using Sales Navigator or any other paid tools?
Scott and I are of the same opinion. So actually, for anyone new, if you follow Mandy McEwen, she's a LinkedIn marketing specialist. She's also very good. Follow her. She gives you lots of good tips, but she has an affiliate link. You can get, I think it was 3 months free of Sales Navigator if you find her affiliate link. Huge. So I did that and then I shut it off.
Yeah.
But at least I had 3 months to practice and see what it can do for me. And then I just recently in August, because I'm using Octopus, I turned it on for 1 month, downloaded a whole bunch of lists. And the biggest thing about Sales Navigator is you can refine it down to users, how frequently people use LinkedIn. So yeah, there's people that'll dial in once a month or once every 6 months, and they're probably not the person you're targeting because they're never going to be on it. So you get the lists, you can dial it in to that. And I think that was probably the most value is you find the people that are active.
Yeah,
so
I think it's one of the big things about
ahead.
automation too. I just went through because I think you're capped at 2,500 invites at any given time. And, we've sent invites out and people are sitting around and that's actually one thing I really like about the automation tool too, is I can actually mass cancel invites,
Yes.
all of them at once or half of them at once, or it shows you how many are outstanding. So that's, if I list get beyond a month and they're not they haven't connected with me yet, I go ahead and remove them. So I'm not holding any of those invites up for more valuable people. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, so just again for clarification, so you're only allowed so many invites into your network, and if those invites are outstanding, it doesn't reset your number of invites until I think the following week. So if you cancel invites, then you get to restart using those invites again. So just be aware if you're doing a lot of invites, just managing. And again, be careful with the number of interactions. If you're a high user, you could be seen as a bot. So just be aware of that. So we started talking about
Clifton,
the good.
To go over the pro account also, because that is the other type of paid account that people readily see on the platform advertised, as soon as you get on. And there are month trials for that. But I think when I did the month trial, the only advantage versus like say the Sales Navigator was that you could do more manual searches. So you're not aggregating like a bunch of data. If I'm just looking for podcast guests and I can only on without the pro account search so much a day or so much a week, then they unlock more options for you to get more searches in. But again, it's all like, what are you using the platform for? What is your purpose? Whatever one you want to pay for, really just if you're going to pay, it has to serve your purpose.
Thank you for that, Wendy. I've not used the pro account, so I don't have much to speak on it. So I'm glad that you brought it up because you're right. That is the one that most people will see. So we did talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly at the beginning, but I want to hear what are some frustrations that the four of you are having with LinkedIn and its current platform. I'm not saying I can get this to the LinkedIn engineers, but if I can, I will. And what are some frustrations? Scott, I see you laughing there. So let me hear from you.
Well, I think it's exactly what Wendy mentioned with her newsletter. You know, they don't, I find that frustrating that they wouldn't want you to connect, at least those that are subscribed to your newsletter. I mean, hello, they're already listening to you and they're already getting an email from you, to do that. I do like the fact that it does push an email into their inbox, which is really nice. I've started inserting some links into my newsletter to get them to subscribe outside of LinkedIn to manually grab that stuff. Same thing, putting it a subscribe link to our YouTube channel to drive our YouTube subscribers as well. It's very easy to add just a sub confirmation link to your YouTube channel, stuff like that. It's just that I think they're slow. They've been slow to the page, and it's always aggravating. Nothing was more obvious than when COVID kicked in and they just drug out LinkedIn Live. And I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to how they roll a lot of their features out to. But it's one of the things that a few years back was I call it the Thanksgiving Day massacre, where they completely changed where if you downloaded your list of contacts, you could have your first name, last name, email address, and they changed that Thanksgiving 3 years ago where nobody saw it. Now you got to have the creator mode on if you're going to do a contact download that to have any type of email campaign and stuff like that. So I'm not saying use it to build a newsletter list and spam them. I'm just simply saying it was one of the things that it's always tricky. Who knows? I posted a post similar to Flint's, who likes Brussels sprouts, who loves or hates Brussels sprouts, and it did pretty well. Didn't 200,000 viral like Burger King and McDonald's did, but that's the biggest thing is the spam aspect of it. I think I wish people would invest a little bit more in that initial reach out. Hey, we're kicked in here. I'd love to talk, or let's schedule a call versus that straight up connection. Let's go straight to trying to slam a sale down here. So that's the most frustrating thing.
What about you, David?
I think I sometimes do events, and they introduced an event feature a few years ago, which I think is great because you can integrate it with Eventbrite if you're going to do an actual live event and people need tickets and whatnot. But my one wish, if Santa Claus were here, would be if we could somehow do some kind of notification to all the people in a certain city, just to say this event is in your city, right? Like here's a heads up. But of course, I understand how that might be abused if people could do some kind of mass messaging. But I think if you could do a post or an article that just got pushed through to people that met a filtered criteria, like everyone in a certain city or state, I think that would be golden, because it would really help people that have a lot of followers and connections. If they were going to do like a live thing, if they were going to be in a certain city and they wanted to let their connections in that geography know that, because they might want to come out.
Nice. Flint?
Yeah, there's two things. One, the repost function, for some reason, LinkedIn does not like their own function. They have it there if someone wants to repost your content because they love it and they want to share it with their network. LinkedIn doesn't push it. When someone reposts, it never goes anywhere. So if you want to share someone's content, don't do repost. Copy the link to their post, do a clean, fresh post, put your comment, hey, this person did cool things, and then you leave a link within your post. That is the only way, because for some reason, LinkedIn created something that they don't like. The second thing is external links. If you want to do external links to like an article that has great information, if you put that link in there and it automatically populates and gives you a cool picture of the article, LinkedIn really scales back on how far that goes. And everyone now takes the link and says, hey, look for the link in the comments. So we've all basically hacked it. And I think LinkedIn should just grow up and allow us to put a link in the post so that it's nice and clean. Yes, they're going to lose people to another site, but we all hacked it.
Yeah. So I've talked to a content creator person at LinkedIn, and her comment was that they don't, and you know, I know Flint, you've experienced it, so I'm not discounting what you're saying. Her statement was, we don't dissuade people from putting links in their content, and we don't, you know, negatively affect those posts. So the algorithm's not supposed to, but it's really the ratio of blue text to black text. And so blue text is any link basically outside or any hashtag or what have you. So they said if the ratio is a certain way, and it's probably mostly black text to blue text, it shouldn't affect it, because like you said, I know a lot of people have been putting the links in the comments, and she said it won't make a difference if you put it there or not. Now, I can't say it does. I'm not there, and I don't work for LinkedIn. I've got no affiliation with LinkedIn, so I don't know how true that is, but that's what I heard from someone at LinkedIn. So just maybe they figured that one out. I don't know. I can't say.
Okay.
Wendy.
Yeah. So side note to there, the algorithm's always changing, and we can never.
Sure.
We just struggle to keep up. So maybe that's new.
That's true. Wendy, what are any LinkedIn pet peeves of yours?
That's funny. Oh, well, now I'm on the comment can't even be the first comment. It has to be the second comment. So you gotta get a buddy to comment first, so then you can reply to the comment with your actual link. So I don't know that I'm doing the right thing anyway, but it's okay. What are my things that I would change? One, the inbox. I mean, that thing is janky.
So messy.
And
so
I shouldn't
messy.
have to pay you for you to just allow me to sort things. Like just give me a folder or option or some sort of organized way of being like friend messages, business leads,
Yep.
stuff I don't need. Like I don't even, I just need
really
maybe
messy.
3 categories, but something in the inbox just like drives me crazy. And then I feel like if you want that to be a bonus feature, that can't be the only thing I get is like an organized inbox. I'm gonna need a lot more than that. Then I also think with the generic posts and how they kind of get pushed out, it's really wonky. Like some things go really far, some things don't. I can't ever figure that out. And so, you know, sometimes polls work really well, sometimes they don't. I think it's just, to me, about being authentically what you like to create and being you. And whatever's going to happen on LinkedIn is good. It's almost like it's just going to happen to you. I know there are people who are like, you can hack it and you can do this and you can be really intentional. But the one thing that I have seen really work is the engagement thing. Like when you are putting your face in somebody else's comments and commenting and then liking and then commenting and liking and doing that over and over again, it does get seen. And so there has to be some sort of way to reconcile that whole thing, because it's a really time consuming to do that, and they know they want you to build community and that's the purpose of it and blah blah blah. But it also to me just seems like but then I'm doing that, but am I really doing it because I want to make those genuine connections, or am I doing it because I want you to see my face in somebody else's comment, you know?
Right.
So it doesn't even get promote that authenticity of connection on the platform. It's just people now are doing it as a practice to be seen. So I don't like that. I think that doesn't necessarily help the platform what it's trying to do to build community. So those are my thoughts.
I do like what you just said, and I've noticed this too, and I've seen enough creators now where it's the reason I like LinkedIn. I'm gonna go a round table in a moment to close out and just give like your pro tip on why you like LinkedIn and something that you'd want a new person to LinkedIn, what you'd want them to take away. But I'm just gonna start with this. The reason I've liked LinkedIn and why I kind of gravitate to it, one, you have a text-based option. As a writer, I really appreciate that. I know I could do more video. I know I could do more images, but I'm like, I like text. I like writing. I like writing long form. And I don't feel like, at least not yet, I've been punished on LinkedIn for writing that type of content. And I like the fact that I could do that. It's simple for me and it's received. I can't do that on Instagram. Like, no, like I don't care how much I write on Instagram. People are looking at that picture and they're swiping. They don't care. So on LinkedIn, I know I've seen it. People read the posts that I write and they'll comment on the posts that I write. And then we could start a relationship and we can build that relationship, which is why I like LinkedIn. So if I was going to give my pro tip, it's exactly what you were just saying, Wendy. Find the content that you like to build on the platform if you want to use the platform and stick with it. Like I know they'll say try this, try that, do polls, do this. find something that you like, stick with it. Because I think with LinkedIn, like all other platforms, it's the consistency. As we can see from all of you here, the reason you've been doing so well on LinkedIn is because you've been so consistent with it. And I think if you could find a format that works for you and you can do it consistently, it will pay off on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to do a roundtable to close out on like a pro tip on what you'd want someone new to LinkedIn to do. And I'll start with David.
Yeah, the reason I like LinkedIn is because it's a business platform for business people who are thinking business stuff and are talking the talk of business. And so if you serve other business people or investors or any other kind of sort of professional or sophisticated person, that's the platform you need to be on. And it's not a place for silly cat videos and all that other kind of stuff that clogs up a lot of other social media platforms. And quite honestly, like I will get solicited on my personal Facebook page by people who are trying to do business. And I even reply to some of those people and I say, why are you sending me this message on Facebook? If you're trying to do business with me, you should be connecting with me on LinkedIn. Because in my opinion, Facebook is where I put my family pictures and vacation stuff. And that's not the place for business. And LinkedIn specifically is. And my big tip would just be to keep it business oriented. Don't go on there and try to do any of the engagement strategies that you see on these other platforms and think that it's going to help you in that crowd on LinkedIn.
I love that. I love that. Scott.
There's 950 million users on LinkedIn and about I was just reading a stat here because I wanted to make sure I'm right. 16.2% of the users log in daily to LinkedIn, while a huge amount are just monthly users. So be consistent, post on a regular basis, keep it professional. We don't need to see the old glamour shot videos or your banana hammock or bikini photos on stuff on there. You might get some engagement, but might not be the right engagement for you. But just I really think there's no better platform to reach your right type of clients, your right type of folks to look for. And so if you're any professional setting, learn how to use it. I'm always amazed when I talk to content creators, podcasters like, oh, I don't want to be on LinkedIn. I'm like, you are literally hamstringing your success and your growth potential and just delaying success immensely. So get out there, see what people are doing, mix it up for what works better for your audience, because, decision makers, folks with investment capital, the high ends, they're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and they're more on LinkedIn now than ever before on a regular basis. So
I agree. Wendy, pro tips?
I'm gonna be totally counter and say put your bikini photo up if you want to. I am dead serious, because you don't know whose niche you're talking about, right? If your niche includes bikinis, baby, you put that bikini on and you rock it all over LinkedIn.
Well said.
You gonna
Well
sell
said.
it.
You don't want to see me in mine though. Come on now.
But I'm just saying, it like I put wellness posts up because I do wellness things. So me walking in the forest is related to the content that I need to be creating. So you're going to see it on LinkedIn, but you have to know your audience. And I think that that's important to really think about, that your connections are not just your connections, they are also your audience, right? Mm-hmm. So know how you're connecting with them, what your intent is again. I think the big pro tip though, with the weekly newsletter, that was what got to 10K. Just every week pumping out a newsletter, and people enjoy the consistency. So if you can be consistent and you can commit to whatever it is you're creating on the platform, then deliver it up, because people will look at it.
And you said pumping it out, but I want to make sure people recognize like that is a quality piece of content that's very intentional. It's not just about making sure you hit publish.
It's not just AI blog post that you just got out of ChatGPT. Exactly, exactly. It's a quality post on a regular basis.
Right. And Flint, any pro tips that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. So we did talk about business pages. Now, I view my business page as something that I kind of forget. It gathers dust. It's there. But really at the heart of things, even if it's a B2B business, it's person to person. So when you post, yes, add value, talk about business, but in there, people also want to connect with a human. So you got to put human stuff in there. I often post something about me and my family, and you can correlate it to business. Like I just did a post this week where my son thought it would be great if the Boy Scouts sold tacos rather than popcorn. And it's an entrepreneurial post with a picture of my kid. I mean, those things are things that people want to eat up. And then it shows a little bit more, I'm human. I have a family. I'm just like you. And that's what
intended
people want
or no?
What's that?
I said pun intended. People want to eat it up.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for all of that. I'm just gonna finish off with again, you're pointing out that you need to use LinkedIn for making those connections. Like that is the beauty and both the joy and the frustration of LinkedIn is that we're using it to connect with people on an intimate level that I haven't seen in any of the other platforms. And I want to just thank all four of you for being so open and honest and sharing your experience with our guests. And I want to thank you, especially Scott, for organizing this and getting this Zoom going. And again, just thank you all for contributing. This was great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
My pleasure. Until next time.